السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Today, inshallah, we will start with you a series of physiology lectures for urinary system. And today, our lecture is going to be an introduction to the physiology of urinary system. So, our objectives will be to identify the functions of the urinary system, and particularly the kidneys, which actually do most of the job of the urinary system. Also, we will identify many anatomical structures and link the functions of these structures and see how structure matches the function of these structures. We also will describe the structure of nephron and link it with the function of the different segments of the nephron in a physiology scope. And also we will get to identify the blood supply of the kidney because it is involved in the function of the functional unit of the kidney, which is the nephron. And in every lecture, we will study the relationship between structure and function. And we will see that in the coming lectures. So we all know that the urinary system is important in eliminating waste products and metabolites that should not stay in our bodies for a long time. إذا لتنقية الجسم من المواد السمية، من النتائج العمليات الحيوية من الجسم، تخلص منها خارج الجسم. And we are also all familiar with the function of the kidney, and the kidneys actually do most of the work of the whole urinary system. However, the urinary system is composed of so many other structures بتكون من أعضاء وأنسجة و parts أجزاء مختلفة. So what are the main parts of the urinary system other than the kidneys? We can see two kidneys here, as well as you can see here two kidneys, and in the hilum attachment of arteries and veins, one artery, one renal vein, as well as lymphatic and nervous supply, as well as a ureter that are attached to each of our two kidneys. Okay, so as we mentioned in this structure in the hilum, a ureter from each kidney runs down and is attached to another structure of the urinary system, which is the urinary bladder. Now, the ureters act as passageways or tubes to conduct urine from the kidneys where it is going to be formed, مكان تكون اليورين. So the ureter will transport or conduct this formed urine into another structure to be stored, which is the urinary bladder. So the main function of the ureter is to transport urine, and this is actually aided by the contractile activity of the wall of the ureter to propel urine down to the urinary bladder, and it's going to be stored in the urinary bladder until it is convenient to be discharged outside of the body through another part which is called the urethra to outside of the body. Okay, so these are the main structures of the urinary system. So now let's go ahead and discuss the main functions of the urinary system, which, as I said before, it's actually performed mainly by the kidneys. So first of all, filtration function and elimination of waste products or excess electrolytes. So excretion of water and sodium chloride is actually performed by the kidneys in the urinary system. And the balance between intake and output of sodium and water is performed mainly by the urinary system. The kidneys and also with the help of other systems such as the cardiovascular, endocrine, as well as the central nervous system. Also, the urinary system and the kidneys eliminates many waste products that are formed in our bodies and should not stay or accumulate, because this will harm and disrupt the homeostasis of our system, such as ammonia and urea, which are formed when amino acids and proteins are metabolized or broken down. Uric acid is another waste that is formed from nucleic acids, such as DNA, when it's broken down. Creatinine is also another waste product that also produced from the muscle creatinine. Also, end products from metabolism of hemoglobin during the RBC's life cycle and turnover, such as bilirubin, so should be eliminated, and this is mainly performed by the kidney. Also, hormone metabolites, breaking down hormones. Also, these metabolites should be eliminated through the urinary function, as well as foreign substances that can be ingested from our food or in the drugs that we take or medications that we take. So we will talk about the main function of the kidney, but in a simplified way. The function of the kidney has three main parts. One of them, and the first part, is called filtration, but there are other steps that are involved in the kidney function that we will discuss in details in the coming lectures. One of the most important functions of the kidney is to, while trying to filter blood constituents, it also conserves valuable nutrients and prevents valuable nutrients from being eliminated. Okay, so the urinary system ensures that all filtered nutrients, such as glucose, amino acids, and other valuable substances, are not lost from urine by a process called reabsorption, إعادة امتصاص. Another important function related to glucose generation, the kidneys have the capability to generate glucose from amino acids such as glutamine in a process called gluconeogenesis during long time fasting. And this actually is a very important function that is performed by the kidney. Another function that is important and performed mainly by the kidneys is the regulation of electrolytes in plasma, electrolyte levels, and electrolyte homeostasis. So the kidneys have the capability of adjusting the levels of electrolytes in plasma by eliminating excess substances or excess electrolytes, such as sodium, potassium, and chloride, by adjusting the loss or the amount of lost ions in the urine, as well as the amounts of ions or electrolytes that are going to be reabsorbed into the blood. So this is highly important in the maintenance of the internal environment and homeostasis of our body fluids and internal environment. There is another function that is important in the urinary system, which is performed also by the kidneys, which is regulation of blood pH, the acid-base balance, درجة الحموضة والقاعدية بالجسم, بالبلازما mainly. So the urinary system regulates blood pH, and we will talk about this in the later lectures or in the last lectures in this course. So the kidneys in general work together in harmony with the lungs to regulate the pH, and the pH should be adjusted in a very narrow window, طبعا with the help of the different buffers in our body fluids, so that our system and our cells can function normally. And this function actually is carried out by the kidney by regulating loss and reabsorption of a buffer, important buffer in the extracellular fluid is called bicarbonate, as well as controlling the excretion rate or secretion rate of hydrogen. Hydrogen is going to be eliminated, and the rate of eliminating hydrogen is going to be an important factor in regulating the pH of our body. Another important function of our urinary system and our kidneys is the regulation of blood volume and blood pressure. So the kidneys are very important in regulating the volume of extracellular fluid, and this actually is directly related to the pressure. So it's well known that the kidney is very important in regulating the long-term arterial pressure, which we will talk and we will cover this subject in the future lectures by, of course, several mechanisms that are involved in this long-term regulatory process. So it helps to maintain blood pressure uh, in a normal level. Also, it is important in the short-term regulation of blood pressure by secreting an enzyme called renin. So renin is released from a certain structure in the kidney when blood pressure falls down, لما ينخفض الضغط. And this actually will lead to generation or production of a peptide, vasoactive peptide called angiotensin 2. And angiotensin 2 will directly increase blood pressure by vasoconstricting the vessels, as well as it will act in the long run to decrease reabsorption of sodium chloride. The urinary system is also important, and the kidney particularly is important for regulating RBC production, and that's by secreting a hormone called erythropoietin. So when there is hypoxia or there is a low oxygen level in blood, this hormone will be stimulated by the cells in the kidney, and they will stimulate the erythropoiesis process in the bone marrow, adjusting the RBC level to a level that is capable of transporting enough oxygen. So, and we know that the kidney is the primary source for erythropoietin. If there is any damage or failure of the kidney, this will negatively affect the number of red blood cells, leading to anemia. One of the main important functions of the urinary system parts that are other than the kidney is the function of the urinary bladder, which stores urine until it is convenient for the human to start micturition reflex and to urinate. So this is actually because kidneys produce urine all the time or continuously. So to have this process more convenient, the urinary bladder store it until it's convenient to release it. And also the ureters are actually are important for transporting the urine from the kidney into the urinary bladder. The urethra also has an important function of transporting urine from the urinary bladder to outside of the body when micturition reflex starts. The kidneys also acts as endocrine gland, as an endocrine gland. So it produces and secretes some hormones. As we mentioned earlier, it secretes erythropoietin, which stimulates red blood cell formation. It also secretes renin, as we mentioned, which is an enzyme that is involved in the renin-angiotensin system that results in production of angiotensin 2 and that helps to increase blood pressure or prevent it from being decreased, as well as it's important in the balance of sodium, potassium, and those important electrolytes homeostasis. Also, it is important in the vitamin D production or activation process. It is actually involved in activation of vitamin D اللي هو اسمه الكالسيتريول, which is called calcitriol. في واحدة من the important steps of activation of vitamin D occurs in the kidney, which is important in actually in the deposition of calcium in bone, and also in absorption of calcium from the digestive. Also, another important factors that are generated in the kidneys اللي هم prostaglandins. Prostaglandins are vasoactive, such as bradykinins. They are important in the modulation of renal blood flow, يعني بيتحكموا بتدفق الدم في الكلية, which is very important في الفانكشن بتاعت الكلية زي as we will see in the coming lectures. طبعا along with angiotensin 2 هذول كتير بيتحكموا بالبلد flow في الكلية, which is important. طبعا لما يكونوا مثلا mainly vasodilators بيزيدوا من البلد flow في الكدني, ف they will enhance the filtration process زي ما رح نشوف لما نتكلم عن filtration function of the kidney. When filtration process is enhanced, then the function اللي هي وظيفة الكلية بتتحسن. Okay? فمثلا هون لما الناس تاخذ prostaglandins inhibitors مثل pain killers اللي هم الكوكس inhibitors, بيصير في عندهم lack of this function, this important function في الكدني. إذا كان أصلا عندهم مشكلة في الكدني function, this will lead to a more serious problem في الكدني function إذا أخذوا هاي الأدوية. Okay. Let's look at the structure of the kidney in order to understand the function of the main parts of the kidney. You can see here a frontal section, cross section of the kidney. You can see here the hilum contains or composed of renal artery and the renal vein. The renal artery brings blood supply into the kidney. Also, you can see the ureter, which collects the formed urine and transports it into the urinary bladder. You can see that the kidney structure is actually composed of two main compartments: the renal cortex here, the outer side, and inside the renal medulla, which has pyramidal structures composed of pyramids. Are called renal pyramids. Okay, and in between these pyramids, these are the renal columns. Okay. So we will talk now in details about the functional units that are actually found here. You can see it, but very small in size. This is the nephron. Okay, the nephron here extends from part of the cortex into the medulla. This type of nephron is drawn here in yellow. This is the functional unit of the kidney, which really performs the function, the whole function of the kidney. So each kidney has about 1 million nephrons. So there are so many nephrons here in the kidney that each one of those filters blood. This is in a simple way, filters blood and form urine in its tubal structure, as we will talk later. So as you can see here, the cross section of the kidney also shows these pyramidal structures that are actually the medulla is composed of. The pyramids has base and tip. So the base is actually parallel to the border between the cortex and the medulla, and the tip is called papilla, where urine actually is released from the nephrons, from the tubes that collects urine from different nephrons into a minor calyces or calyx, المفرد calyx, and major calyces, which are important in collecting urine مثل pools بتجمع فيها الurine that is formed by the functional unit. Also, the kidney is surrounded by a strong capsule that protects the delicate structure of the kidney. In this schematic, you can see the blood supply of the kidney and of the functional unit, which is called the nephron. As you can see here, the renal artery brings about the blood supply to the kidney, and actually the kidneys receive 1/4 of the cardiac output, which is a very good amount of blood, of cardiac output, which is actually important to have an efficient function of the kidney. So you can see here the renal artery that actually will divide into different segmental arteries, and then interlobar and interlobular arterioles and arcuate arteries here that actually are important to bring the blood supply into the nephron, the functional unit of the kidney. So the blood supply that is coming to the nephron is coming through an arteriole that is called afferent arteriole, coming from the arcuate artery. And the afferent arteriole brings blood to a capillary bed that is called glomerulus. And this glomerulus glomerular capillaries then coalesce into another arteriole, which is called efferent arteriole. So we have a capillary bed that starts with an afferent arteriole and then end in an efferent arteriole. And this efferent arteriole will then actually give rise to peritubular capillaries, another capillary bed. So this is a very characteristic in the nephron or in the kidney, that we have two systems of capillary beds, the glomeruli and the peritubular capillaries, attached or connected in series, يعني متصلين ببعض. And this is actually is going to be an important characteristic in terms of understanding the function of the kidney, the filtration process, as we will see in future further lectures. So the main components of the nephron, the functional unit of the kidney, are, as we mentioned, the blood supply is an important part, as well as the nephron structure that is composed from a capsule, which is called Bowman's capsule, and a tubal structure that starts with proximal tubules, and then loop of Henle, and then distal tubule, and then we have connecting tubule, collecting tubule. Okay, that if it was in the cortex, it's called cortical collecting tubule. If it was in the medulla, it's going to be called medullary collecting tubule. Okay, and then we have many collecting tubules that form a collecting duct. If we look at the loop of Henle, okay, which is an important part of the nephron, there are different segments. We have the thin descending limb of Henle, thin descending limb of Henle. Then we have thin ascending limb of Henle. اوكي so descending اللي هو بيكون نازل ascending اللي بيكون طالع and then thick ascending limb of Henle. طبعا هدول are actually has or have unique characteristics in terms of the histology of the types of epithelial cells and the characteristics of these epithelial cells in terms of permeability to water or salts. We will discuss this later in details. There are actually two types of nephrons. The nephrons that are mainly present, or most of the nephron is present in the cortex, are called cortical nephrons. Only a little part of the loop of Henle is found in the, part of the medulla. And the another type, or the other type of nephrons, are called juxtamedullary nephrons, where the nephrons lie in the border between, or junction between, cortex and medulla, and the most of the length of the loop of Henle extends deep in the medulla, حتى ممكن إنه يوصل close to the tip أو البابيلا of the pyramid. So these are called juxtamedullary nephrons. بنلاحظ انه البلاد سبلاي is unique for the juxtamedullary nephrons. بتختلف عن البلاد سبلاي of the cortical nephron. طبعا الكورتيكال نيفرون بيكون short بينما الجكستاميدولاري نيفرون بيكون longer، فبالتالي ايضا البلاد سبلاي له unique. فالبيريتيوبولار capillaries له بنسميها vasa recta. ليش؟ لأنها organized in a way that they are organized in a way that these peritubular capillaries lie side by side around or surrounding the loop of the very long loop of Henle. Those structures اللي هم الفازريكتا بالإضافة للجكساميدولاري نيفرون are important as a very important function اللي هي concentrating urine, as we will discuss later. Each kidney is actually made up of about 1 million nephrons, and actually these nephrons are composed of the renal corpuscle اللي هي الحويصلة. So this is called a renal corpuscle. This is from outside, and this is the view from inside the corpuscle. So the corpuscle اللي هي الحويصلة in the nephron is composed of Bowman's capsule اللي هي محفظة كبسول محفظة Bowman's, and inside, or خلينا نحكي relatively, it looks like it is inside the balloon اللي هي الglomerulus. The glomerulus is a tuft of a capillary، مجموعة من الcapillaries اللي هي بتبدأ بالafferent arteriole و it then coalesce into an efferent arteriole. اوكي، إذا هي capillary bed تبدأ بafferent وتنتهي بefferent arteriole. Also another important structure اللي هو tubal structure بنسميه renal tubules. renal tubules اللي بتتكون من proximal convoluted tubule, loop of Henle, distal convoluted tubule, as well as a collecting duct. العدد النفرونز في الإنسان it's actually if there is any damage or any change in the number of nephrons, this is going to be irreversible. This is going to be irreversible. يعني ما بيزيد العدد ولا بيصير في نوع من الريبير إذا صار في أي damage في النفرونز. فعدد النفرون بيبدأ بعدد معين غالبا بعد سن 40 after the age of 40 بيصير في decline in the number of nephrons due to aging اللي هو about 10% every 10 years after the age of 40. فتقريبا يمكن على age of 80 بيكون في 40% من النفرون صار لها damage أو يعني بتكون قل عددها، وبالتالي مش معنى إنه الفانكشن رح يصير لها deterioration، لأنه البقية النفرونز غالبا تعمل compensation للloss of other nephrons. So as we mentioned in the previous slide, there are two types of nephrons, the cortical and the juxtamedullary. The cortical اللي هم present mainly in the cortex, only a slight part of the loop of Henle is present in the medulla. And the juxtamedullary nephrons where a loop is very long and extends deep in the medulla. And these juxtamedullary nephrons are actually only 20 or 15% من العدد الكامل أو النسبة الكاملة من النفرونز، بشكل فقط 15% juxtamedullary nephrons, and those are actually important in the concentrating capability, urine concentration capability that is done by the kidney. الكورتيكال بيتميزوا بأنهم short loop of Henle، بينما الجكستاميدولاري they have long loop of Henle's، وسهل إنه نميز اللي هو thin descending, thin ascending, thick ascending، بيكونوا طبعا prominent في هذا long loop. وزي ما حكينا those juxtamedullary nephrons are important في ال concentrating capability، بينما الcortical nephrons هم ال majority of nephrons. 85% from all our nephrons are present in the or located in the cortex. So blood travels via an afferent arteriole, and actually this will bring blood into the capillary اللي هي بنسميها glomerulus اللي هي في nephron structure. So blood here will travel from the afferent arteriole, okay, into this capillary bed, the glomerulus. Then a filtration process will take place here from the glomerular capillaries, and filtered fluid will enter the Bowman's capsule. راح تخترق البومنز capsule وتدخل في داخل الكبسول اللي هي filtered fluid in a process called filtration. Now actually blood continue in traveling from the glomerulus or glomerular capillaries into the efferent arteriole, where it travels in the peritubular capillaries اللي هي another capillary bed لكنها extends and تلتف حوالين أو surrounds the tubules اللي هم starting from the proximal and ending in the طبعا in the later tubules. وطبعا حكينا إنه بالجكستاميدولاري البيريتيوبولار كابيلاريز بنعطيهم اسم خاص اللي هم the vasa recta. Now other than filtration process, other processes take place in the tubular structure of the nephron. فبالتالي بنلاحظ إنه in number 2 the arrow shows some substances that will leave the tubular fluid back to the blood. So that means that some substances are going to be reabsorbed back to the circulation. يعني صار لها filtration لكن it's going to go back to the blood circulation directly from the tubules into the peritubular capillaries, and this is what we call reabsorption. In the arrow number 3 here, you will see some substances that will be taken up from the peritubular capillaries من البلد الموجود في peritubular capillaries and secreted or released into the tubular fluid to be eliminated. وهاي العملية بنسميها secretion. أما النمبر 4 فبنلاحظ إنه for whatever it is left طبعا في آخر segments في tubules is going to be called urinary excretion. يعني المتبقي من كل هاي العمليات بنسميه urinary excretion اللي هي it's going to be excreted as urine. In this schematic you can see the cortical nephron blood supply, and in this figure you can see the juxtamedullary nephron blood supply characterized by having this lying side by side peritubular capillaries surrounding the long loop of Henle which is called vasa recta. الفازا recta هي البيريتيوبولار capillaries الخاصة بالجكتا medullary nephrons. Here you can see how blood supply that comes via the renal artery is actually give rise to segmental arteries, then interlobar arteries, then also divide into arcuate arteries in the different parts of the kidney, and then leading or ending into the afferent and then glomerular capillaries, then coalesce into efferent arterioles, and then into another capillary bed surrounding the tubular structures of the nephron, which are the peritubular capillaries, then will give rise to veins اللي هم interlobular veins, arcuate veins, then interlobar veins, and ending in the renal vein, and then back to the heart. So looking at the nephron structure in a simplified way, here you can see that blood flow will come via the afferent arteriole and will actually flow into the glomerular capillary. And then a process of filtration will take place. Some fluids طبعا except هو جزء من البلازما except for plasma proteins اللي هي حجمها كبير بالإضافة لطبعا cells cannot pass through. So substances and fluids will be filtered from the glomerular blood into the Bowman's capsule, to the inside of the Bowman capsule, and then this fluid will actually undergo several processes and changes in content. Process number 2 involves reabsorption. So some of the substances that were filtered are going to go to be taken up back to the blood عن طريق الperitubular capillaries. و some substances who mainly بيكونوا waste are going to be secreted from blood peritubular capillaries blood into the filtered fluid to be eliminated. يعني حتى نزيد من سرعة elimination للwaste product بتكون process number 3 اللي هي secretion. And then 4 will actually be the urinary excretion. Whatever left after these processes in the tubules are going to be the urinary excretion. So we can actually summarize these processes in a formula where we can say excretion, for example, excretion rate equals filtration rate اللي هو filtration process minus reabsorption لأنها هاي حتختفي من السيستم أو حتطلع من السيستم, and then we will add to that the secretion rate. This will give us the excretion rate. So these are the mechanisms that are important for urine formation. Excretion equals filtration minus reabsorption plus secretion. So now let's talk in brief about the basic mechanisms of urine formation, starting with filtration process اللي هي غالبا بتكون passive يعني ما بتحتاج إلى ATP أو طاقة It is also a little bit variable. ليش؟ لأنها related أو إلها علاقة بالsize والcharge of the substances. not highly selective، لكن في نوع بسيط من السلكتيفيتي اللي هي بسبب السايز للبروتينز، والبروتينز they usually don't cross. ف it is mainly not selective، لكن إذا طلعنا على البروتينز البروتينز they cannot exit بسبب السايز تبعهم، فممكن إنه نحكي هذا الجزء البسيط اللي ممكن يكون selective فيها. بالإضافة إلى التشارجز زي ما رح نشوف كمان شوي إلها علاقة بالcharge of the substances. و also تقريبا 20% من الرينال بلازما فلو. الفلو طبعا لما نحكي عن بلازما فلو اللي هي الاماونت او الفوليوم of fluid، اوكي، اللي هي البلازما that flows in the renal system في الunit of time. So 20% من الرينال بلازما فلو، الفلو الموجود اللي هو في البلازما الدم اللي بيوصل للكلى، 20% بيصير له filtration. اوكي، اذا النسبة تقريبا ثابتة. 20% بنسميها filtration fraction من الرينال بلازما فلو بيصير له filtration في هاي الستب. طبعا في الجلوميرولس another process that is important in the urine formation is reabsorption process. طبعا الفلتريشن مهم جدا، والreabsorption also is another important function. ليش؟ لأنه so many or important variable and important substances are going to be filtered. طبعا ليه؟ لأنه ال process of filtration is somehow not selective, not highly selective. So we need these valuable substances. So then reabsorption will actually protect and conserve these substances. But this process is highly variable and selective. طبعا تعتمد على نوع substance. مثلا electrolytes most electrolytes are going to be reabsorbed. The nutrition or nutrients اللي مثل الجلوكوز والامينو acids مش معظمهم، كلهم جميعهم entirely reabsorbed. وغالبا العكس تماما للwaste products، بيكونوا very poorly reabsorbed، لأنه إحنا بنحتاج إنه نعملهم elimination إلى خارج الجسم، فما بدنا نرجعهم على السيستم. أوكي. هلا the third process is the secretion process. كمان هاي very highly selective، بتكون variable مختلفة حسب المواد. في بعض المواد اللي هي غالبا بتكون waste مثل الأسيد، البروتونز أو الفورين substances أو الكيميكالز، الجسم بيحتاج إنه يتخلص منهم in a higher rate than the normal filtration rate. بدنا نخرجهم بسرعة أكبر من filtration process. So those are going to be added into the filtered fluid من peritubular capillaries, added mainly actively. okay، يعني بنصرف طاقة in order to get rid of these waste، غالبا waste، حتى إنه يزيد ال efficiency of eliminating these substances. This is a simplified schematic representing the basic mechanisms of making urine or urine formation in the nephron, which is number 1 filtration, number 2 reabsorption, and number 3 secretion, and whatever left here is going to be the urinary excretion. Now let's look at the structure of the renal corpuscle. As you can see here, the Bowman's capsule here, and here is the afferent arteriole, efferent arteriole, and in between the afferent and efferent arterioles are the glomerulus or the glomerular capillaries. زي ما بنلاحظ البومنز كبسول بتتكون من two layers اللي هم الانر layer أو visceral layer. هي مكونة من specialized cells اسمهم البودوسايتس. هدول البودوسايتس لهم زوائد and they wrap the glomerular capillaries. لهم زوائد بنسميها pedicles وبيلتفوا حوالين الجلوميرولار capillaries. أما الأوتر سيرفيس فهي بتكون عبارة عن squamous epithelial cells اللي هي البارايتال لاير. السبيس بين الفيسرال والبارايتال طبعا هذا السبيس اللي بيحتوي that contains the filtered fluid والfiltered fluid will flow outside of the Bowman's space into the proximal tubules. طبعا زي ما بنشوف الافرنت arterioles والefferent arterioles في الوول احنا بنعرف انه الارتريولز are characterized by having smooth muscle cells and there are smooth muscle cells that are modified بنسميهم juxtaglomerular cells اوكي موجودين بالافرنت mainly زي ما احنا بنلاحظ هون بالwall of the afferent وجود الjuxtaglomerular cells أو مرات الefferent they are actually in proximity to another tube اللي هو part من الديستال convoluted tubule اللي هم بنسميهم خلايا macula densa. هلا الjuxtaglomerular cells مع الماكيولا densa بيكونوا جهاز أو apparatus اسمه juxtaglomerular apparatus. هذا الجهاز عبارة عن جهاز مهم جدا في ال autoregulation of the kidney أو renal autoregulation process اللي هو عبارة عن نوع من الفيدباك رح نتكلم عنه لاحقا. فيدباك تغذية راجعة لنعرف محتويات السائل اللي تم ترشحه وصوله إلى الديستال convoluted tubule أو ascending limb of Henle هل هو زيادة أو هل هو ناقص وبالتالي بنتحكم بالفلتريشن function نزيدها أو ننقصها to increase or decrease the filtration rate which we'll talk about in more details later on. كمان من الخلايا المهمة في هذا الجزء هم الميزانجيال cells عبارة عن contractile cells موجودين في spaces بين الافرنت والافرنت arteriole أو بين نفس الجلوميرولار capillaries. طبعا هدول لهم دور في بيزيدوا أو بينقصوا من بيتحكموا يعني بيعملوا adjustment للبلد فلو اللي حيدخل في داخل الجلوميرولار capillaries وبالتالي بيتحكموا بالفانكشن ككل للفلتريشن. Okay. And in this schematic, we emphasize on the composition of the filtration membrane. زي ما انتم شايفين الفلتration occurs across the glomerular capillaries. إذا بدنا نطلع على glomerular capillaries that are covered with these podocytes هون بيتشكل filtration membrane. So let's look at the composition of filtration membrane. From the inner side بنلاحظ إنه بيكون في عنا في الinner side اللي هم أول شيء عنا الendothelial cells. الendothelial cells زي ما إحنا شايفين بتكونوا fenestrated. نوعهم في الكدني بسموهم fenestrated glomerular capillaries. طبعا ما بيمنعوا خروج البلاد سيلز مش مثل الساينوسويدز لكنهم بيسمحوا لبعض مكونات البلازما to pass through اللي هو طبعا أسفل بنشوف في عنا البيزمنت ممبرين أو البيزل لامينا اللي بيتكون من طبعا negatively charged fibers وهذا كمان بيعمل نوع من البارير. إذا في عنا أول بارير هو الاندوثيال سيلز بينما الفينستريشنز بتسمح لخروج الفلويدز بعملية filtration process. البيزل لامينا بتعمل كمان another barrier ليه؟ لأنها negatively charged it makes it harder for negatively charged proteins to pass through بالتالي بتعمل barrier mainly للnegative charged proteins. بعد هيك عنا البيديكلز للبودوسايت اللي هي الزوائد اللي هي بتكون ممتدة أو wrapping الجلوميرولس اللي هي الانر side of the Bowman's capsule. هاي كمان تعمل بارير فبالتالي الفلويدز اللي بدها تطلع إذا it should pass through the اللي هم slits أو الفراغات بين هدول البيديكلز فبالتالي الفلترد فلويد لازم يطلع من هاي السلتس. طبعا السلتس إلها سايز معين كمان it doesn't allow proteins اللي هي mainly medium sized proteins إنها to pass through. فإذا mainly الglomerular or Bowman's capsule inner أو visceral part هي البودوسايت زي ما حكينا البروجكشنز تعمل نوع من البارير. And this is another schematic representing these different membranes inside the filtration membrane and different barriers. Here you can see a representative schematic of how these slits pores actually are going to help filtration process. At the same time, will prevent large or medium-sized proteins from passing through the filtration membrane, as well as the basement membrane. It will prevent negatively charged proteins from being filtered. And the endothelium has fenestrations, which also has a certain size that helps a certain size of substances to pass through these cells. Renal tubules, histology, as well as the collecting ducts, are composed of specialized epithelial cells of different characteristics. And you will see in the coming lectures that this actually matches the function that take place in each of these segments. For example, the proximal convoluted tubules are simple cuboidal with brush borders. The loop of Henle has either simple squamous in the thin part and cuboidal in the thick part. The distal convoluted has simple cuboidal, and the last part of the distal convoluted, as well as the collecting duct, has simple cuboidal, which has two types, principal cells and intercalated cells. Each of these has a specific function or specialized function. Now we will talk a little bit about micturition, which is a reflex that is very important as a function of the urinary system to eliminate urine. The kidney actually produces urine continuously, and urine will flow down from the ureters to the bladder by peristaltic contractions, and then the bladder will contain and store the urine, and the muscle that actually is composing the wall of the urinary bladder is called the trusser muscle. Contraction of this muscle empties the urinary bladder during the micturition reflex or the urination reflex. And these contractions are both voluntary and involuntary. So there are some voluntary contractions activities and involuntary contraction activities during the micturition reflex. Usually the bladder can hold about 800 ml. طبعا it is a range of volumes, but when volumes exceed a certain volume or a certain range, stretch actually will take place, and sensory receptors will initiate the micturition reflex when there is a buildup of stretch in the urinary bladder نتيجة اللي هي وجود higher volumes of urine. And it's actually a spinal reflex. It's a spinal reflex where the micturition center is mainly in the spinal cord. There are parasympathetic impulses that actually running from the spinal cord that will cause the urinary bladder to contract لما المicturition يبدأ, and also it will cause the internal urethral sphincter to relax. إنه في الوضع الطبيعي the internal and external urethral sphincter are going to have tonic contraction اللي هو في الوضع الطبيعي at rest. But when micturition is activated or stimulated, there will be a tonic contraction to the urinary bladder, but inhibitory tone to the sphincter, internal sphincter, to relax. And the internal sphincter is composed of a smooth muscle. It opens. However, the external sphincter, which is a skeletal muscle, it is a voluntary part. It should also be controlled voluntarily by the person when it is convenient to urinate. Then it will relax, initiating the elimination process of the micturition process and urination. As it is demonstrated here in this graph, at rest there is a tonic discharge of motor neuron fibers for the internal and external sphincter, which keeps it contracted. However, when micturition reflex starts due to buildup of stretch نتيجة increasing volumes of urine, then the reflex will start by activation or tonic discharge اللي هو parasympathetic through or via parasympathetic neurons to the urinary detrusor muscle to contract, and then there will be also inhibition of the tonic discharge to the internal sphincter, and this will open it, and then the external sphincter also will relax, initiating or starting the release of urine process. Here we come to the end of the first lecture of renal physiology. We will continue tomorrow, inshallah, live as your schedule. And we will talk about the glomerular filtration function as well as the renal blood flow regulation, inshallah, tomorrow. Thank you. Oh, and if you have any questions, you can send me on chat or in the lectures, during the lectures. Assalamu alaikum.